It's rolling now.
I'm John Thompson Barnhardt.
Okay.
Or Thompson Brown Barnhardt.
That's right.
I was born in so-and-so, and I want to get Granddaddy to give me a little information about him. And then we'll swap places.
Okay, so there you have it. This is okay. It's rolling now. It just started. It just started.
Is it going now?
It's going now. It's going now. I'm Thom Barnhardt, Thompson Brown Barnhardt, and it's January 17th, 1988. I'm over at my grandfather's house on Eastover Road, and I just wanted to spend some time and get him on film and see what some of his thoughts were on things today, and have him tell me some of his history, where he grew up, where he came from, that sort of thing.
All right, cut it on.
Okay, cut it.
All right.
It's going.
All right, you want some information, Tom?
Yeah, I just thought I'd spend about an hour with you today if I could.
All right, well, let's start out with my being born in Charlottesville, Virginia, at my grandfather Bolton's home in November 1987. And
1897.
1897 is right.
Okay.
To begin with, our mammy, who was a slave and worked with my grandfather Brown, decided she was coming with us, and she had a great influence on the activities of my life. We lived in Charlottesville for so many years, I don't remember exactly. And Father had a boys' school there, which lasted quite a few years. And then we moved from there to the University of Tennessee, where he was head of the Department of English.
That's right.
And then he came back to Charlottesville in the real estate business, and finally ended up teaching head of the Department of English at Winthrop College in Rock Hill. Dr. Johnson was president of Winthrop, and whenever he left, Father was in charge and in command during the time that he was away. While that was going on, I was getting my education, 2 years at Davidson, 1 year at Clemson, to get military training for World War I, and then graduating in the class of 1919 at the University of Virginia in civil engineering. From there, I got a job with DuPont Engineering Company in Pontiac, Michigan, where I nearly froze to death out there one winter. And funny incident happened. We were digging footings for a reinforced concrete building to house about 1,000 automobiles for Pontiac now, but at that time, Oakland Motor Car Company. This footing was like a square hole in the ground about 4 or 5 feet deep, and it had rained and filled up with water and then ice on top. One of my rodmen fell in there. We had one terrible job to get him out.
But you did.
Then I came from there back to Charlotte with the Southern Engineering Company and stayed with them 2 or 3 years. The Depression came along in 1921, and we in 21 I came back here
From Michigan.
from Michigan and got a job with Southern Engineering Company for a couple of years, and then went with the Duke Power Company, staying with them until I retired in 1965 for 43 years. In the meantime, I had married in 1922 Catherine Wiley Poe of Rock Hill, South Carolina, who was in the 10th grade with me in the training school in Rock Hill.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And we we were together all through college, dances at Davidson, Clemson, and Virginia, and we were finally married in 1922, I believe, yeah, in 1922. Then, after she had had quite a few experiences in having children, we had a son, and later a daughter. Son born in 1928 and a daughter in 1936. And I stayed right here in this house from 1937 until today.
So today.
1988.
So that's 50.
Off for a little while.
That's 50 years already, huh?
Huh?
That's 50 years already.
Yeah.
You were just talking about
Tom,
1922. Go ahead.
I want to tell you a little bit about my mother and father.
Okay.
We lived on a farm out of Charlottesville, about a mile and a half out, which is now filled up with condominiums. And my grandfather Bolton's farm was about 3 miles away, and we would generally go there on Sunday for Sunday dinner. He had a wonderful farm. It was, Fieldstone Farm barn to replace the barn which had burned. He raised ponies, Shetland ponies, and had quite a few, and gave us one. Ours was named Frolic, and I had to take care of it, and it was a real responsibility for a youngster 10 to 15 years old.
That is.
Then,
Now, this is south of Charlottesville? Is that right?
what?
Where was the farm?
Oh, the farm?
Yeah.
We were in Charlottesville,
Okay.
Virginia.
Okay.
About, right now, it would be just off of Highway 29, about a mile and a half north of the gymnasium at the University of Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, mother and father lived there. And then we went to Knoxville, Tennessee, where he was head of the Department of English at the University of Tennessee for 4 years.
Right.
And then we came back to Charlottesville, and he was in the real estate business there with a Mr. Hillary. And things weren't going too well, so he got a job in Rock Hill, South Carolina, as head of the Department of English there. And he was in command, in charge of the college when Dr. Johnson, the president, was away. We lived there for, well, until he died in 1933. My mother was a lovely person.
That's what I understand. That's what my mom told me.
She was born in Richmond and was genteel, if there ever was a person to know. And she ruled the roost in our family. And she and our old mammy, Mary Ann Carter, lived with us from the time that I was born until she died in about 1925. And she was a devout Christian, if there ever was one.
Now, where was your father born?
My father was born in Lynchburg, Virginia. And Grandfather Brown's home was just 15 miles north of Richmond. Not north of Lynchburg, not Richmond. Grandfather Brown was quite a guy. We didn't recognize the fact, but he was a country lawyer. He'd gotten out of the Civil War as a sergeant and studied law under his uncle, so-called big uncle because he was very tall. And as a lawyer, he went to the legislature in Virginia for one time, and after the Civil War ended, he was appointed on a commission of 7 men to bring suit against West Virginia for their pro rata share of the Virginia debt before the beginning of the Civil War, their pro rata share. For 25 years, Grandfather Brown stuck with this thing. 5 of the 7 had either died off or were senile, and there were only 2 of them left. A lawyer in Richmond who said, "No, I'm through. I'm not going to do anything about it." So Grandfather Brown said, "I'm going to stay with it." And he finally prepared the brief which the Attorney General of the state of Virginia used to bring suit against West Virginia. And he won that suit, which whose pro rata share was $6 million, but the suit specified that interest should be at 6% interest. Well, in that time, 25 years, the $6 million had gone to $14 million. You could have bought West Virginia debt bonds for 5 cents against $100. And a lot of people bought them just to gamble. My wife's uncle in Rock Hill bought a bunch of them. He made a lot of money on those.
Did he?
Yeah. So that was West Virginia debt, Grandfather Brown. We would go to his place, Hazelwood, at Arrington, Nelson County, Virginia. Incidentally, he was on the vestry of the little church at Livingston, which was about 2 or 3 miles away from Hazelwood. And we would, youngsters, grandchildren, would go to Hazelwood to spend a week or 2 in the summer. And Grandfather Brown would raise watermelons. And he had a lot of white ducks too. He raised watermelons, and when we went there one summer, I looked in the basement. Didn't have refrigeration then. Looked in the basement, and there were 75 watermelons there. I said, we called him Pa, not Pierre, Pa. And I said, Pa, we got 75 watermelons in the basement. Let me take some of them over to the station a mile away and sell them. No, we might need them. 75 watermelons. Well, when you ate a watermelon there, you cut it in 2 in the middle, you ate a half and I ate a half. We ate the heart out of it, and then you left the rest of it in the yard, and the ducks would come, and they'd eat it right down to the thin, paper-thick rind. That was one of the things that we thoroughly enjoyed at his place. But he stayed with us West Virginia debt for 25 years, and everybody told him to quit, lay off, never do it. But he stayed with it and finally succeeded. That was Grandfather Brown. Grandfather Bolton, as I've told before, had a farm of about 300 or 400 acres, about 1.5 miles on Highway 29, north of the gymnasium at the University of Virginia. And when we went there, we thoroughly enjoyed just being on the farm. And the ponies, he had not a cart, but a little basket 4-wheel thing. And I had one time hitched up 4 ponies and drove them into Charlottesville. And that that was the toughest time I've ever had, getting back home with 4 ponies.
That's so.
They were just raising cane down on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
But then Grandfather Bolton gave us a pony, one of the ponies,
Mm-hmm.
and a 2-wheel cart,
Mm-hmm.
which we enjoyed. And I was Father trying to get me to ride this pony to school in the 4th grade when we lived in Charlottesville.
Mm-hmm.
But the pony didn't like the idea of being ridden, and he threw me off in the ditch. And I'd had just about enough about that time. So, well, let's see.
Well, tell me, where are they buried? I know your mother's buried in Richmond. Is that right?
What?
Your mother and father are buried in Richmond.
Buried in Richmond?
Is that right?
No. My mother and father are buried in the University of Virginia Cemetery.
That's right. That's right.
At the university.
That's right.
He was an instructor in English
Mm-hmm.
after he graduated there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went from there to Woodbury Forest
Mm-hmm.
as headmaster.
First headmaster of the school.
Huh?
The first headmaster of the school.
First headmaster of Woodbury. And there's a book written by Elizabeth Norfleet,
Mm-hmm.
which gives a history of Woodbury.
Mm-hmm.
A very complete story.
Good.
He was at Woodbury before he was married. I had the impression that he was there while he was married, but that's not so. He was not married when he was at Woodbury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Your grandparents, though, are buried in the Richmond at the Hollywood Cemetery. Is that right?
My grandfather Bolton and his wife
Okay.
are buried in Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond.
I hope to see that when I'm up there
Yeah.
soon.
Then, but my mother and father are buried in the University Cemetery.
That's right. That's right.
Grandfather Brown and his wife, his first wife,
Mm-hmm.
are buried on the place Hazelwood.
Mm-hmm.
However, when Hazelwood was sold, their tombstone was moved to the little church at Livingston.
That's right. Okay.
So that his tombstone at Livingston, but he and his wife are buried on the farm at Hazelwood.
Ah.
Yeah.
Now tell me, you're saying, I know you were in the First World War.
I was.
Yeah, tell me something about that.
Yeah. Well.
You were probably 20 years old when that started.
Yeah.
1917 would have been
What's that?
20 years old when we went into the war.
Yeah, 19. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, World War I was coming along when I was at Davidson
Mm-hmm.
College.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I wanted some military training because I knew I was going to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Clemson 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, they'd put in ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps, at the University of Virginia.
That's right.
And I went to Virginia, as I expected to do, from Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there as an instructor in surveying and railroad engineering, as well as instructor in heavy artillery.
Mm-hmm.
That is the technology
Mm-hmm.
of heavy artillery.
Mm-hmm.
So that I was at Virginia when the World War ended.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been inducted into the service and was kept there as an instructor.
I see. Okay.
That was that.
Now say probably 12 years later, Would have been 12 years later. Would have been the Great Depression, 1929.
21.
29, the Great Depression.
Oh yeah,
Tell
29.
Tell me about that. Where were you when that happened?
In 1929,
I'll read about it, but I never talked to anyone who really was in it.
in 1929, I was here with the Duke Power.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And
Did you see the effects in Charlotte?
what?
Did you see the effects of the Depression in Charlotte?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, houses were selling for practically nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and money was just tight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just nothing moved very well.
Mhm.
There just wasn't any money available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess that had a pretty big effect on your life, I would guess.
What?
That probably had a pretty big effect on your life.
They
Had a big effect on your life, I'm sure. The Depression
did what?
had a big effect on you.
Oh,
You know, you're in...
its effect on me.
Right.
It sure did.
Uh-huh.
I got a 40% cut in my salary
Did you?
with the Duke Power Company. Part of that cut was a bonus that I'd previously been getting. That was done away with.
Mm.
And I also took a cut in salary along with the bonus.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Keep going.
Huh?
Keep going.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just checking.
Well, then I stayed with a Duke Power. I was married in 22,
Uh-huh.
and then we had our first child, Channing Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
in 1928. After, well, anyhow,
Uh-huh.
then our second daughter,
Mm-hmm.
your mother,
Mm-hmm.
in 1936.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our family. And
Okay.
in,
Now...
in the meantime, we had built this home here
Mm-hmm.
in 1935.
35.
And we moved in here when she was your mother was just a year old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
How much did it cost to build this house?
About $12,000.
12,000.
Yeah.
That's land and everything.
No, I got about $22,000 or $3,000 in it. Land and improvements and extras and all that sort.
Uh-huh.
Somewhere around, say just under 25,000.
Have you paid off the mortgage yet?
What's that?
Have you paid off the mortgage yet?
Have a what?
Paid off the mortgage on the house yet?
Oh yeah. I never did have but $3,000 on it,
Is that right?
and I paid it all off in the first 2 years.
Jeez.
So I haven't had any mortgage on this house really at all.
Uh-huh. So you think there's been some inflation since you were born?
What?
You think there's been some inflation since you were born?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, this house, I can get 10 times as much as I've got in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think.
I'm sure you could. I'm sure
Yeah.
you could.
That's just,
No doubt about it.
yeah.
No doubt about it. Well, what were you doing when World War II came around? World War II.
I was with a Duke Power Company.
Right. And you were still in the reserves?
I never was in reserve.
Okay.
But I had a brother in the Navy,
Mm-hmm.
I had a brother-in-law in the Army,
Mm-hmm.
and about 5 first cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I ought to at least offer my service to see if they wanted me.
Mm-hmm.
I was too old to be drafted. They couldn't get me. But I volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 months after that, I was 75 miles from London.
Uh-huh.
They picked me right up, took all my teeth out, and gave me a full plate both ways. And then I was in Shrivenham, 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 which is the west point of England.
I see.
And we were in training there for a short while. Then I was shipped with about 40 other officers to Eastbourne, which is a town directly south of London on the coast,
Mm-hmm.
about 75 miles from London
Mm-hmm.
on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I had quite a promotion by being shipped.
Mm-hmm.
But the food that the British gave us down there was so terrible. I lost 8 pounds in the first week.
Did you?
And
The food there is still bad.
what?
The food in England is still bad.
Who did?
The food in England is still bad.
Yeah, sure. Yorkshire pudding.
That's right.
You stick a fork in the top of Yorkshire pudding and the fumes come out. Well, anyhow, I was a ranking officer down there. And this not the ranking officer, the British officer was a ranking, and I was a ranking American officer.
Right.
And I formed groups to be sent out from Eastbourne when parts of Europe were occupied.
Mm-hmm.
And then Walker Sisler, who at that time I think was at least president or chairman of the board of the Detroit Edison, got a group of 75 officers together to operate the utilities of Europe after they had been conquered. And I was one of that group. And he was quite a guy. The damnest man in the world. He'd tell you to do something almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to get it done. We were in, well, while I was at, I've forgotten where we were, in Paris, I believe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had a shipment of turbine blades, about $250,000 worth,
Mm-hmm.
from Escher Wyss, the company in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
And Sister told me to go to Le Verrier, which is the town on,
Got it.
is working now.
It's working now. I don't know why it stopped working.
You know where we were?
We were talking about the small town in Switzerland, in France, on the
Le
coast.
Verrier,
That's
oh,
right.
yeah.
That's right.
So I went to Switzerland, to Dijon,
Mm-hmm.
and I had 2 trucks in my command car, and we got to the Swiss border, and the Swiss wanted us to take off all of our insignia. I wouldn't do it. I said, I'm not going to do it. And if you want me to pick up these turbine blades, you bring them to me. Well, they finally agreed that if I put on a raincoat with no insignia on the outside, it'll be all right. I said, okay. So we went in, and going from Dijon to Le Verrier, snow was stacked up in some drifts 5 feet high, and with a 1-track road through.
Mm-hmm.
So for that 5 miles in there, if you met somebody, one person had to back up 2-3 miles.
Jeez.
And but anyhow, I got these turbine blades, took them out, and I turned them over to another officer in Dijon. He signed for them. That relieved me of responsibility, and he took them on into Belgium. They had to go to a Belgium plant for operation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was quite an experience, and I finally got to Berlin. You want to get it? I went back to Paris from Dijon,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved from there to into Germany, and finally I ended up in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And funny experience in Berlin. There were about 150 generals in Berlin to get credit for being there, see?
Mm-hmm.
And the commanding general issued an order that half of them should go home.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. But there was a party being given for these generals had a party, and about 10 o'clock that night all the lights went off.
Mm.
Well, they called us, our group, to find out what was wrong. Walker Thistle checked up and they found out that the Russians said that they had to cut the lights off because one of their generating units was getting out of shape.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just their way of irritating us in Berlin. There wasn't anything wrong. So order came out for us to build a line to that area, and we built it in one day. The next day, we got about a mile of line built the next day. And we didn't hear from the Russians anymore after that. But we met with them once a week, our group. And if they wanted something that we had, that we'd gotten from, say, the Germans, we'd generally let them have it. But the other way around, if we ever wanted anything that they had, they had to go back to headquarters to check it out. They actually stripped a generating plant, East Berlin generating plant, of everything in about 3 weeks. Generators, condensers, everything. And there was nothing but the shell of the building left when we got there.
Why did they strip it? To take it back home?
Took it back to Russia. I saw one anchor bolt that was about 2 inches in diameter that they couldn't get the nut off, so they burned it off with a torch. Well, the time came for me to come home, and I had enough points to come home. I had 80-some points to come home, and a man, a civilian, had been brought over from Detroit Edison to operate the utilities, electric utilities in Germany. And this man was trying to get a group together, and he tried to hold me. I went to my commanding officer, Walker, so I said, look, he's trying to keep me here to do a job, and I've got enough points to go home on. And he said, how do you stand with Hamilton, a friend of mine? I said, I've got 5 or 10 more points than he had. He says, come on. So he went around to this executive officer and chewed him out. And he told him, said, I can get you out to the port of embarkation this afternoon.
Hey, that's fast.
So I said, no, but I would like to get out anytime after tomorrow night. I got a job to do at Frankfurt. Fly to Frankfurt and do the job and come back the next day. So he got me out the next day after I got back. And I was in one of these 40 and 8 freight cars with straw in there to sleep on. And we left Berlin about 8 o'clock at night, something like that. And there were about 30 of us in this car. You put the straw on the floor and you slept on it. I was ranking officer, and I got a little extra straw and was up front in the freight car, which was supposed to be a good location. I got in that freight car and went to sleep at night and slept straight through. 12 hours, completely relaxed. Coming home, had enough. And Caddy, your grandmother, met me at Fort Bragg, and we were delighted and really back together after being over there 21 months.
And you not seen each other at all in 21 months?
What?
Had you not seen her for 21 months?
That's right.
Not at all.
No, I see. I was in Europe. You didn't. I mean, the war was going on.
That's tough.
Yeah, well, I was, no doubt.
It's a long time.
So I cabled her just before I left Berlin that I was on the way home. Meet me at Fort Bragg. On the way back, I was given about 50 men to deliver to Fort Bragg. I was responsible for about 50 men to get them to Fort Bragg and get somebody to sign for them there.
Uh-huh.
Well, we finally got to Fort Bragg, but I was missing an officer. And I was worried because I had to turn this group over to a sergeant and he signed for them.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, this officer showed up and I was completely relieved and came home that afternoon, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Glad to get home. Over with.
I bet so.
That was my experience in World War II.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'd had enough.
I bet so.
A lot of people stayed in the reserve to get a pension, see?
Mm-hmm.
Not me, I had enough.
Well, now I'm gonna keep
Cut it off a little.
Okay. This is the sword I want you to tell me about.
This sword came from, I think, Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm.
When we'd go into a town, we'd issue an order
Mm-hmm.
to the civilians that they'd have to turn in any knives or swords or that kind of things, and this was turned in
Mm-hmm.
to the
Let the camera see it there. Uh-huh.
that's gold plated.
Is it?
Yeah, you can't get it out. I don't know. It's stuck.
Mm-hmm. Looks
Yeah.
like it might be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they turn that in. Uh-huh.
Anyhow, this is quite a. But we made them turn these things in, and we had a long table about 20 feet long in the basement of the mayor's building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was all, just the whole table was covered up. I got a bunch of bayonets,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got some bayonets upstairs.
Oh, do you?
One of them I'm particularly interested was an Italian bayonet,
Mm-hmm.
which was about as big as your thumb,
Mm-hmm.
and about 2 feet long and round.
Mm-hmm.
And you stick that in a man, you have a hard time getting it out.
I guess so.
You had to pull a trigger and blow it out. But
Now you gave another sword to the Mint Museum, is that right?
what?
You gave another sword to the Mint Museum, is that right?
I didn't know.
You had two swords before.
Oh, I had another sword
Uh-huh.
which had a swastika on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a dress sword for the German army when they went in parade or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave that to the Mint Museum along with my uniforms of World War I.
That's right.
I still have uniforms of World War II.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then I came back and went back to the Duke Power Company and stayed with them until 1965,
Mm-hmm.
after having been there 43 years.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I was in the engineering department, in which we designed steam power plants and hydroelectric power plants.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, there were no nuclear power plants.
Mm-hmm.
So I retired in 1965 after 43 years service,
Mm-hmm.
and your grandmother and I went to Europe, and we went back over some of the places that I'd been. One of them in particular was Eastbourne, which was directly south of London, about 75 miles, on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was at Eastbourne, the Germans were flying over, and the bombs that they would drop in London, if they had any left over, they'd drop on Eastbourne before they went back across the channel. They hit the railroad station, and I wrote your grandmother what a tough time I was having over there with these German planes coming over and dropping the bombs. And when we went back in 1965, we went down there to the same Grand Hotel, big hotel, right on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And as we went in, there was a footman there in uniform, pictures on the wall, a beautiful place.
Oh yeah.
Princess Margaret, I think her name was, had been there the week before, and a lot of royalty had been in this place. Your grandmother says, "This is a place you had such a tough time in."
She didn't believe you.
Yeah. So I came back to Duke Power in 43, 4, 5, 45. 1945, and stayed until 65 and retired then after 43 years service.
Well, now, picture this. Maybe my grandchildren might be seeing this later on, 20 years from now. They might see this in 25 years from now. What would you want to tell them?
What would I tell them?
What would you tell them if they're seeing this 30 years from now?
About what?
Anything. My grandchildren are.
Well,
they're getting a unique chance to listen to their great-great-grandfather talk.
All right. Well, the first thing I'd tell them to be sure to get an education as good as your great-grandfather has, and by all means be prepared from an educational standpoint if you want to be anybody in the world. Number one, and then number two. I'm giving all these directions and I'm not following them myself, but anyhow, I would say, well,
you probably want one of them to be a lawyer, one of them to be a doctor, and one of them to be an engineer already.
If you're going to have that many children, I think this, you ought to explain to them the relative economics of the various professions as well as business. You can get into business and be lucky and be more successful financially than in any of the professions. Now, if you're going to, well, in the professions, I'd say, from a standpoint of economics primarily, today I would say medicine, law, engineering. Now, engineering, if you get into engineering, keep management in front of you all the time. Management. You get all the training that you can get in engineering, but just remember, get into management, and that is running things. And if you don't run things, you're not going to get anywhere. Then, of course, after those three professions, you can become a minister or a dentist. He's not recognized by MDs very well, so I wouldn't
suggest
I'd
that.
steer clear of that as a profession.
Tell me.
Your great grandfather. No, my grandfather would be.
My great-great-grandfather.
Your great-great-grandfather, Major Channing M. Bolton, was named for Bishop Channing Moore.
Right up here.
Who was the...
Keep talking.
And he was the 14th Bishop of the United States, and the second, I think, Bishop of Virginia. And he was a bishop of a part of North Carolina near Norfolk, Virginia, until North Carolina had a bishop of the Episcopal Church.
I see.
And my grandfather Bolton was named for this bishop, Channing Moore,
Mm-hmm.
because they lived next door to the Boltons in Richmond.
I see.
And Grandfather Bolton had 9 brothers and sisters. There were 10 in his family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he inherited part of Branchland. And
Mm-hmm.
and incidentally, right behind you is a picture of the diocese of, oh gosh, what's the name of the church in Williamsburg? I'll get it after a while.
Yeah, I don't know, Granddad.
Well, anyhow, in that church is the a pew which belonged to our great grandfather, many greats, Judge Waller.
Mm-hmm.
Pew number 9.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you asked me to tell you what to tell your grandchildren.
That's
I
right.
said, first of all, to get an education.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any difference what kind, but I would suggest that you ask your dad to give you a summary of the relative merits of professions if you're going into a profession, or business with respect to the profession.
Mm-hmm. Now, Granddad, tell me who this picture is above you.
That's my father up above.
Mm-hmm.
And can you cut it off a minute?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
This is a picture of my mother and father about the time when they were married, somewhere near it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And
That's about.
well,
when they were-
ask me another one.
All right.
Ask me about children. I think I've told them enough. I'd like to say one thing,
What's that?
and that is honesty is the best policy.
Mm-hmm.
Economically, morally, physically, every way. Honesty. And of course, the thing of it is, different people have different ideas of what's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to contend with that.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, and if you get into business, by all means, when you make an appointment at a certain time, either be there or call up ahead of time and give them some reason why you can't.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how you and your wife Caddy, how did you all get along so well? You were married for how many years?
We were married 56 years.
56 years.
Yeah,
That's something people can't do today for some reason.
yeah, that's right.
I don't know why.
Well, we had disagreements, plenty of them,
Mm-hmm.
but we worked them out.
Mm-hmm.
In our day and time, there was no such thing as a divorce.
Mhm.
You put up with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And well, we had a happy life,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a lovely, lovely lady. And
That's nice.
since she's left me and I'm running this house, I can see all the things that she has done here
Mm-hmm.
for our good, of both of us.
Mm-hmm.
She had her job, I had my job,
Mm-hmm.
and she did her job as well or better than I did mine
Mm-hmm.
in keeping house. And we had a wonderful life together.
Well, that's nice. That really is nice.
One thing I think that helped us, I insisted on our saving something. I went to a banker, president of a bank in Charlotte, and wanted to borrow $500 to buy some stock. He said, "What collateral have you got?" I said, "I haven't got any." He said, "Well, you want to borrow money without any collateral?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, how are you going to pay it back?" I said, "Well, I'm saving $75 a month now, and I'll pay you back at that rate." He said, "If you save $75 a month for the rest of your life, you'll be a rich man." And
that's good advice, huh?
huh?
That's good advice.
And by all means, save something. If you save something, you're not going broke. The two things don't go together.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, let's stop it for 1 second here. Okay.
Tom, there's one thing that you know about already, but I want to tell you what a wonderful occasion was the celebration of my 90th birthday.
That's something else.
Who on a 90th birthday or any other birthday can have family to come from Chicago, near Philadelphia, Washington, Charlottesville, Raleigh, plus many friends that were right here in Charlotte. That is a miracle almost.
It really is. It's really nice.
And God, that I will never forget. It was a wonderful thing. And your mother and Bill were the ones that put it on. I thought we would have a few of the family there for dinner. And that was all. And dinner at her house. Well, the first thing I knew, a bus, a city bus, 40 people capacity, drove up my driveway, and my granddaughter, Kathy Shantz, came, rang a doorbell to get me to come out, and said, "We're taking you." And here was a bus right at my front door. Well, I got in the bus and it was filled up with my friends. I was amazed.
That's great. That's great.
And to me, that was a wonderful occasion. And I'll never forget it. And want to thank many, many times your mother and her husband, Bill.
That really was nice. Really was nice.
Yeah.
Really was. One thing I want to do, Granddad, is I want to go in this room.
All right.
Mom wanted you to tell us about the pictures, the portraits on the wall
All right.
of the different people there.
You.
It's kind of dark. I wanted to be able to see a bit better.
That's not going.
It's hard to see, but go ahead and tell me anyway. Tell us who this is.
Is my grandmother, Bolton. She was a lovely lady, and during the Civil War, she did quite a bit of nursing of wounded soldiers in the Richmond area, and quite a write-up in the newspaper gave her credit for all the things that she was doing. That is her portrait. Over here is a portrait of her husband, Channing Moore Bolton, who was a major in the Confederate Army, CSA, during World War I. Well, no, during the Civil War, war between the states, a lot of people call it.
He was a major?
Huh?
What
Major.
was? Major,
Major Channing Moore Bolton.
He's your grandfather.
My grandfather.
Tell me about your, you helped start Christ Church, is that right? Tell me about Christ Church.
Oh, about Christ Church, Episcopal.
Right.
That was the beginning of Christ Church, was instigated by Coke, Halkett, Cosby, and myself at St. Peter's. And we got 3 other men, Norman Clark, Runt Lowe from Holy Comforter, and one other, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But there were 5 of us that went to Bishop Peening in Raleigh,
Mm-hmm.
asking him to allow us to form a mission. We told him at that time that we would like to have 60 families before we would start in as a mission. We got started on the thing before we could get going almost. We had 120 families. And it was at a time when gasoline was being rationed at on account of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And this was about 1941 that all this was going on. And that rationing of gasoline helped us to get this movement going in an area which was far away from St. Peter's Church. Well, things went well, and I was appointed the first senior warden by Bishop Peening. And we got together 12 men that we called the vestry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I allocated jobs to each one of the 12 to report. And in that way we got this movement started. When the war was over, going back, we had a Sunday school to begin with on Selwyn Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
goes by Queens College.
Yeah, that's right. So.
We rented a house and had a Sunday school there. And for an Easter service, we had a service at the Moravian Church.
Oh yeah.
And we have a list of the boys and girls who contributed about $50 to that service.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went from there, after the war was over. Jim Hamilton knew where to buy a Quonset hut.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought a Quonset hut that was 40 feet in diameter
Mm-hmm.
and about 160 feet long. We put a petition in the middle of it and had the Sunday school on one end, the church on the other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the summertime, with the church in this Quonset hut, it was just like being in an oven.
Mm-hmm. I
You
bet.
sit in church and just perspiration would just soak your clothes. It was so hot. We finally put a fan up in the top and sucked the hot air out, and that helped some, but not too much.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the way we got started there. Then after that, we built the present church, and later on made an addition to which we spent about $90,000, $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, things were not going so well on pledges. And Ketchum and Company, the ones that we employed to help us raise the money.
Oh yeah.
And their representative came to me and said, now look, we're not doing too well. And let's say if you give us $100, you can put your name on a window. You give $200, you can, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
It had a complete list. I said, forget about it. You're going to get your money.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get all you want. And sure enough, he decided not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it would never would have done.
No, I don't think so.
And so finally, about a week or two later, pledges started coming in, and then we got all the money we wanted.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, what books have you been reading lately?
What?
What books have you been reading lately?
What?
Have you been reading any good books lately?
Yeah.
Any good books? Have you been reading any good books today? Lately?
What?
Have you been reading any good books lately?
Books?
Yeah.
Yeah. The history of Christ Church is 25 first years. Has been published by Rupert Gillette, who at the time that he worked this up was editor of the Charlotte Observer. We hope that we can get the present editor to take on who is a member of Christ Church, to take on another book of the next 25 years. And it'll take 2 or 3 years to do that job, so that it'll be at the end of 25 years by the time he finishes. If you can get him to do it. I hope we can.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Let's stop it. Let's stop at one.
Right after I got 1965, when I retired, I got started on genealogy of the Brown family. And it's just like eating peanuts when you get started. And so I published Book of Brown, which gives you a complete story of all the Browns and their families. But as soon as the name is changed from Brown, you have to stop. If you don't, you publish a library almost. So if we can get the present editor to take on this job, it'll be quite a thing to do. Maybe you can get him to do it.
Well, now I guess you've got some interest. Maybe you might want to take up the torch and do that from here on.
To help him?
Yeah.
The best place for him to get information is the minutes of the vestry. And you get the basic background that way. And but it's a real job to do.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Well, Granddad, what else are you gonna do here? You got time left?
What?
What else will you be doing in the next few years? You still playing golf?
Yeah, I'm still playing golf. I haven't quit.
I know it.
I wanted to give up my locker and not have my golf clubs clean and stored. But your mother says, no, you get it. Keep your locker. And
What's your locker number?
1.
Number 1.
Number 1. And I told Bill Browning, I said, I want you to have it. But I'm not sure they ought to get in. The present initiation fee is $17,500. Well, to me, that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money to anybody.
I mean, and I would say unless you're making for $50,000 to $100,000 a year, either salary or commissions or what, you are not to belong to it. You are not to.
How much did it cost you when you joined?
$25.
$25.
My discharge of World War I, and $25 is what I got in with. And it's $17,500 now.
How much do you pay in dues now?
None. I don't pay any dues at all.
Why is that?
Huh?
Why is that?
Well, I have been a member continuously since 1920. And but you only have to be a member for, I think it's 35 years continuously, and have to reach the age of, I think it's 70 or 70 before you are classified as an honorary member and pay no dues. They figure you're so old by that time you can't do game music club.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending some time telling me some things. I said thanks for spending some time with me today.
Today?
Yeah, I think people will be interested.
No, Tom, I'm delighted.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see, and maybe we'll get together another 10 years from now. You can tell me what you've done the last 10 years.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
We'll get together after your 100th birthday party
Oh,
and do this again.
All right.
See if your perspective has changed any.
All right. I'd like to hear that sometime if you.
I will. I'm going to cut it off now, but you can definitely listen to it sometime. We'll bring it over and let you hear it.
All right.